Kathy. My name is Mary Ann Tashko, and it's my pleasure to be interviewing some prominent citizens of our Conejo Valley. And today I am happy to have with us Daryl Reynolds.
Hello.
How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Good. Thank you for being with us. Daryl is very, very involved in the city of Thousand Oaks and is part of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Tell me some of the other things that you're involved with, because the list you gave me is quite extensive.
It's not only the city but the county too, but I am on the City of Thousand Oaks Customer Service Awards judging panel, which is a panel that awards for good service that are by people who are nominated by the public for when they come in and they work at the counter. And I think that that's a very rewarding committee that I'm on. It's nice to see the employees thanked for their good and courteous service. I'm also on the county Planning Commission. I was appointed by Supervisor Frank Shello, and I've been on that now for almost 6 years. I'm chair of the Ventura County Cultural Heritage Board, which is the board that designates historic landmarks throughout the county of Ventura. I'm also on the Juvenile Justice Commission, and I've been on that for about 9 years. You're appointed by a Superior Court judge, and our main duty is to inspect the jails and lockups where juveniles are taken throughout the county, and also Juvenile Hall in Colston, and then the work program, which is a juvenile restitution. Along with that, I'm on a Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee for the Ventura County that advises the Ventura County Transportation Commission. You know, along with now Director at Large of the Stagecoach and the Conejo Valley Historical Society. I've been on that board and past president of it. And I am president of the Genealogy Society for the Conejo Valley also. I have a varied interest from traffic to juvenile justice to county planning to traffic.
You're
you know,
very busy.
Right. It
Very
keeps me out of the
busy.
shopping centers, my husband says.
When did you come to the Conejo Valley?
We moved. I grew up in Encino. My husband grew up in Woodland Hills, and he worked out here at Northrop for about 4 or 5 years before we got married. And we were married in September, and January I was pregnant. We couldn't live in the apartment that we had in the valley, so we found some cheap housing out here.
What year was that?
1972 is when we moved out here. And in Newbury Park, bought a house that was about 6 months old, and it was affordable at the time. It was $22,500, and a few years later we sold it for twice that and bought a lot in Conejo Oaks and designed and built our own home. And
What was it like? What was it like?
it was really, well, I grew up in Encino and saw that really build up. Our family moved there in '54, and there were sheep grazing, and it was the same thing out here at Northrop. There were sheep grazing. We'd take the children out at lunchtime and have lunch on the front lawn at Northrop, and there would be sheep around. We'd fly kites out there. It was the open spaces, but it was like the San Fernando Valley too. But it was cheaper housing, and with the job out here, you were driving against the traffic, and there wasn't much traffic at all. So it was a wonderful place to raise the children because it was that rural. Of course, when we lived up in Newbury Park, it was in a rural area with horses, and the kids had their 4-H projects. And
How many children do you have?
I have 2, and very proud of them. Our daughter lives in Santa Barbara. She works for an oil company, Veneco, as an accountant. Even though she has a degree in microbiology, she didn't want to come back to Thousand Oaks and work at MGen. She likes the Santa Barbara, and she's 28. And our son, this February 2nd, will graduate from the Ventura County Sheriff's Academy, which I'm extremely proud.
Oh, you
Since
must
I'm
be.
so civic-minded, I love it that my son wants to carry on that and become a sheriff. And eventually hopes to be a TO cop, since he grew up here, and he's 26.
That's great.
So.
That's great. Well, since you've become so involved, when did your involvement with the city and the county start? And what was your calling? What prompted you to get involved?
When I was growing up in the Valley and in college, I was very involved in politics. And it was the Young Republicans. And when we bought our lot in Conejo Oaks, I had to get CC&Rs to find out how we could build on the property and the parameters. And Mad Schaefer was president of the Homeowners Association. So it was getting those CC&Rs and meeting Mad Schaefer. And one day She was riding this little moped through the neighborhood after we had built our house. And I stopped my car and put the window down and I said, "Oh, I see you're running for city council. Can I help you?" Because I had always worked on campaigns. And that was the start of it. And I remember Madge one time telling me, because she had been treasurer of Meadows PTA at the time, and I didn't even have children in school yet, and I became assistant treasurer when she won election, and the assistant treasurer moved up. And she once told me that being PTA president would look good on a resume. So it was really that. From then on, I have to attribute to Madge getting me involved and us becoming friends.
As you look back on the history of the city of Thousand Oaks and Newbury Park and Canal Valley, what person do you think had the biggest impact?
As far as what? As far as how it was developed, or?
As far as how it was developed as a city, and
well, I think we've had wonderful city councils. And I remember when we were getting our house plans approved, it was very difficult even then through the city. And I think this was about 1976 when we were going through the planning approval process. I think that there are so many restrictions that we'll never have wall-to-wall concrete. All I can say is, it's a wonderful thing to go on a vacation, but I love coming home. And I love coming home because there aren't billboards. I love how our city's planned. I think there are a lot of people that have made our city the way it is, not only our city councils, and I think of Frank Shillo and Alex Fiore and even Matt Schaefer. I worked on the Measure A years ago, even though I've kind of switched sides over the years. But I think back on John Byer, and I don't know if a lot of people in this town remember him. And there was John Byer, who was a senior citizen, and he really kept an eye on the council. And I think he made them have a conscience and do good. And there are some old timers that a lot of the new people don't. Donna Fargo, who was a big influence in our community. And I don't know if people know that there's a house on Hillcrest, Farland, that was Donna's home that she gave to the Park District. She lived there. I think the deal was she could live there, and then it would go to the Park District. And I know even some of our city planners lived in that house.
I know who Donna Fargo is, but maybe you could explain.
She was a woman who loved the Historical Society, and we have a craftorama, and we also dedicate our Triumphal Ball program. That's our big fiesta during the year in her memory. She was she worked for the movies. Oh, I can't even think. I've seen your hours now, my husband says.
We all do.
She was a horsewoman. She started the Canal Valley Days, the Grand Marshals racer, and she did work, I know, in the movies an awful lot. I don't know if it was all horse work or what, but she was a big influence, I think, on getting our people to come together. And there were a lot of the old timers. Tony Lamb was that way too. But I really think of John and Myrtle Byer and their influence in the canal. And it's a shame that they're not still around or people don't talk about them. I think it's important to look back on our history because I think we learn from that. And so we don't make as many mistakes too as if we go back and look at the history.
What are your hopes for the future of Thousand Oaks? Seems like time is going by so quickly. Now we're in I guess it's the first year of our new millennium.
Right. The hopes for Thousand Oaks, I think that for people to realize, just like this past election, that everybody has their own opinion. There are two sides to an issue. And maybe for the people to come together. I think our city needs some healing. And even the country, and I see with the election, 50% for one candidate and 50% for another, and I think that our city is that way too. I think it's a wonderful city. I think the way it's planned, and I'm always disturbed when people don't want any additional building. And I used to be one of those. I typed the first draft of Measure A, which is a slow growth initiative, and I sat at markets getting signatures on that. And people were so opposed to us at the time, but we thought it was growing too fast. And then, of course, it was the economy that really slowed things down in our community. And I really think that if you own a piece of property, you have the right to develop it, but I think there are enough restrictions in town that it's not going to be developed wall-to-wall concrete. I'm very partial to the oak trees, and I watch that at the county. I always question about tree removals, even in the county. But I have to remind people how many trees had to be removed for your own home. This is a wonderful place to live. I absolutely love it. My husband and I have properties in other places, but we love it, and I don't know if we'll ever move from this area. We moved out here because of cheap housing and because of his job, but yet we stay, and
That's great. That's great. What has been, I know you've been involved in so many things, but what is your favorite or greatest achievement, you think?
my greatest achievement. I've been involved in so many
achievements.
things. Well, I am very proud of starting the child care program at Meadow School. And we did as a PTA unit, and it was one of the members that came to me with an idea from convention, why don't we have child care at Meadow School? There were some child cares run by the YMCA. And we decided that a lot of mothers like to have your children stay at school, don't like to be bused to another school, that we like to feel secure that our children will be at that school, not going out on field trips. And so we started that program. It took a lot of convincing of the school principal and also the school district. And eventually, because PTA, we could not obligate the next board to a high financial, and we needed a classroom. And there wasn't one available. And one board could not obligate the next to, let's say, paying for it, a portable building to come on campus. So we convinced the school district, a bunch of people, to take over the program. And that is what their child care program is today. And it's throughout most of the schools in the canal. My own children became latchkey children because of the involvement, and they'll probably tell you that my daughter always says we were raised by an answering machine, which I don't feel is true. But I think that I was very fortunate that my husband had a wonderful job, and he really didn't want me to work, and I did work before I was married. But I found that I was so busy with all my volunteer work that when I did work, and I worked as a bookkeeper for a friend for a while, I had to quit because I couldn't keep up with my volunteer work. And it's really come full circle because now my husband is retired from Northrop after 31 years. And he is very involved in the volunteers and policing, and he was always at the hardware store, and we kidded him and said, why don't you get a job there? So he got a job for a short time at Orchard Supply, but he had to quit because he couldn't keep up with this volunteering work in the city. So I think we've become a family of volunteers now, and I really enjoy seeing my husband volunteer because he never did. During that time. So.
What is your personal motto?
Oh, and have a good time while you're doing things. I really believe that family should come first. I know at times when I get involved in things, my whole family gets involved. It's not just being president of the museum, it's them being there to help. And I know my children, they were taken advantage of, I realize, but it was just part of being one of my kids that you pitched in and helped along with me. But I think you have to enjoy what you're doing and have a good time.
Are there any questions that I didn't ask that you'd like to answer?
I think I was able to say everything I wanted to, especially how I feel about the community.
Good. Good. Well, we enjoyed having you.
Oh, well, thank you
very much. And I
much.
hope you can keep track of all the different activities you're involved in.
Well, I was thinking in a couple of years, the people that have appointed me to committees and commissions, their terms will be up, and maybe they'll decide not to run again, or maybe they won't be reelected. And I once said that, gee, my life could end in 2 years with all my committees, and my husband had to remind me, no, honey, it could start.
So you'll continue.
Oh, of course, of course.
I have a feeling you'll continue.
As I get older, there's always the Council on Aging or something.
Anyway, it was a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate
Daryl.
it.
Okay.